So when these designers of games like New Super Mario Bros. 2 are trying to widen their audience beyond all of the people who could get into the first Mario or already have played many Marios, they are focusing their design choices that sometimes degrade the experience of the people who have been playing their games forever and are at a much higher skill level. Because they aren't walking through the game with enough concern about how this will throw off the balance needed to keep more experienced players satisfied. And there's such an easy fix to bring things back into balance. The best place to look for it is at the indies, or small groups of developers without big corporate influence. Lots of innovation comes from them because a lot of the time they're hungry and simply need to bring innovation to get noticed at all. The indie games like Super Meat Boy and Runner 2 both implement difficulty designs that increase the content and allow many different kinds of players to get just as much challenge as they want out of the experience. Super Meat Boy is one of the hardest fucking games ever, but it is such a slow burn that seriously anyone can get into it. The first few levels are like Super Mario Bros. They are simple and introducing gameplay elements slowly and carefully to make it so when the difficulty starts getting cranked, it wasn't because it was cheap, it was because you weren't good enough. But it teaches you in the design that through failure you will become good enough. But if you want even more challenge, you have the Dark World, which remixes the regular levels into some of the hardest fucking shit ever. Super Mario 3D Land actually implemented a similar system that I believe might have been inspired by Super Meat Boy. Runner 2 is designed to be a bit more accessible though. There are difficulty modes you can choose from easy as pie to hard as hard dicks, but it allows you within the level itself to choose how difficult you want it to be. There are different pathways. The harder ones with more things to dodge are worth more points, which actually matter in this game, and you can skip checkpoints for a higher score, which increases the difficulty massively. The key here is risk versus reward. Edmund McMillan, who co-designed Super Meat Boy, actually wrote an amazing essay on it. You can find it in the description if you'd like to know more. But the gist is that game designers can entice the players to play riskier just so long as there is a reward worthy of taking the risk for. It started with arcade games like Space Invaders with the bonus flying saucer that flies at the top every once in a while. It's not required at all, but it does require multitasking not seen in any games at the time that complicates your game. When the game rewards you for taking risks, as in chasing down the one-up mushroom that might slip you up and send you down the pit, the risk to get an extra life, the reward. What is brilliant about adding risk versus reward to your design is that it provides extra challenge for the risk takers, or the more experienced, while still being unnecessary for the completion of the game if you're not ready for that level of risk. Most people, when confronted with a risk, won't even think of taking it when it doesn't carry a good enough reward. So, why nobody plays New Super Mario Bros. 2 like I just did is because the game gives you no reason to. It never rewards you for the risk you take, and so the player isn't being led to take risks and play riskier. It never communicates to you that this is even something you should do. There's no sign behind the checkpoint flag that shows you that if you make it to the end without the checkpoint, you will get like 1,000 extra points towards unlocking a new playable character or a new level or something to that effect, and it never shows you that at the end, if you play the entire way as Small Mario, then your score towards this goal gets multiplied by 2 or whatever. The game could do so many things like that. Take the difficulty modes like in Runner 2, such a simple addition to a game that helps please everyone. And the different modes are actually designed to add difficulty, not cheap frustration, or not difficult enough. Because you can't just slap it together, you have to put a lot of work into it, and multiply your workload and time playtesting, but it would all be so worth it. A game that anyone can pick up and play. Maybe it could look a little like this. In the easy mode, there aren't that many enemies. There are tons of extra lives. Super Guide is on if you're having trouble. There are checkpoint flags in case you die that make you Big Mario if you're small. In normal mode, there are more enemies. Super Guide is triggered by more deaths than in easy mode. There are less 1-ups and checkpoint flags, but they don't power you up. Hard mode. One-hit kills. Maybe you can still get the Fire Flower or Tanuki power-ups, but you'd still be Small Mario and it wouldn't add to your health bar. No Super Guide. The platforms are smaller, there are more pitfalls, more enemies, more difficult enemies, no checkpoints, more hits to kill bosses. The enemies and bosses are faster, and the enemies are placed in a way that requires precise landing. You could even find a way to make this sort of thing work in multiplayer, simultaneously letting the players go through a game in different ways. You could do sort of the reverse of the Purple Bunny and add handicaps for more experienced players. Make it so they can't collect power-ups while they do get hurt by enemies. Maybe even the end of a level could do something like Left 4 Dead. Show who killed the most enemies, or played riskier and took more difficult paths. Give incentive for the more experienced player to play riskier while the other player plays at their own pace. Oh shit. Huh. They're already doing that. God damn it, I need a Wii U. But the biggest offender to me, in terms of this particularly problematic style of design, was Skyward Sword. The implementation of the tutorial character, Fi, really struck me as just condescending while I was playing. I mean, this wasn't a Zelda game made just for kids or beginners. This game was released along with the massive Zelda continuity that Skyward Sword tied together. That was to hook people like me, who've got a history with the games. So it's frustrating when there are really rudimentary things that the design itself is telling me quite clearly if I don't put it together just by thinking. And then Fi pops out of my sword and takes the controls away from me to tell me some pretty duh shit. I know what Fi is going to say before she says it, and it takes a hell of a lot longer to get through than pressing the A button the minute Navi says, "Hey! Listen! Listen! Hey! Listen!" I've heard a lot of people have similar problems with the game, and they're easily solvable too. You can still add difficulty settings where players who want to go through a game that is traditionally about exploration and figuring the world around you out and how to get it to work for you and your goals can figure out and explore things on their own without any condescending handholding. If you want this game to just be for newcomers, that's fine. There's still much better, more artful ways to go about doing it, but I still sort of understand. But if you still want to make a game that is enjoyable for people like me, give me an option to turn the tutorial off. Just give Fi dialogue when it's necessary for a plot point or something, or more information about the monster you're fighting a la Navi if you want it. If you're even iffy about implementing this, just have the default mode be specifically for the beginner so they don't have to monkey with the difficulty options. And yeah, I know these aren't massive fixes. These aren't design ideas that change a game from New Super Mario Bros. 2 to a modern-day equivalent of Mario 64. These are just small changes Nintendo could make to these games that would go a long way with interest of only doing the bare minimum you can in interest of pursuing this ideal. It's what sort of made me interested a lot in Donkey Kong Returns 3D. Not enough to buy it. I mean, I already own the Wii version, which is still great in spite of all the unnecessary waggling. But what interested me was that Nintendo, trying to sort of tap into the iPhone market, added some extra shit to make the game easier. Fair enough. There's already a hard version. Give these more iPhone-style players more heart so they can play on the way to work or sitting on the toilet and get a quick game fix and beat a level and pick it up later. There's definitely a reason for Nintendo to want a piece of that action. There's money in it. Not that Nintendo cares about that kind of thing. But the part that grabbed my attention about this is that it actually has difficulty modes. You can play the game with the original hard-as-dead-balls difficulty the Wii version has. I really hope Nintendo pursues this further. It could just be so those guys that are totally cool with buying the same game again, but a little different, won't pass it up, but they have to see how much potential this has, right? It's just something simple that this giant company with plenty of money and tons of people working on the games really has no reason to not put their effort towards. So many of the greatest games are accessible to everyone. Nintendo still does design some of their games with this in mind to this day. It's so weird that they don't focus on making a game that is as difficult as the player chooses it to be, just for these games. Challenging for the beginners to complete, and challenging for the experienced to master. It's been done before. And remember that these guys have lasted for such a long time for good reason. And it's not because they're great characters, they're not really characters at all. They're avatars for a great experience for so many people. Some who picked them up as their first game ever, some who picked them up well into their life of gaming. Also, there's a reason why this guy is not up there with them, but that's probably opening up a whole can of worms for another day. We have plenty of another days ahead of us.